Okay, if I could encourage those leaving the public gallery to do so as quickly and as quietly as possible, as we're moving on to the next item of business. And the next item of business is a member's business debate on motion 16148 in the name of Alex Rowley on Scottish Engineering's engineering skills gap analysis for Scotland. The debate will be concluded without any questions being put. I'd invite members that wish to participate to press the request to speak buttons now or as soon as possible. I would advise the Chamber we're a little tight for time, so I would welcome speeches being in around the time limit, and I invite Alex Rowley to open the debate around 7 minutes. Mr Rowley.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I want to thank those who signed the motion today for this debate, and also my business manager for allowing the time. I have been consistent in my view that if we are to secure the future of Scotland's economy, we must be laser-focused on ensuring access to education and training in the skills we will need for the future. And as policy continues in the direction of a just transition towards a greener economy, it has never been more relevant than it is today that we invest in the skills and education of the future. Scottish Engineering Chief Executive Paul Sheeran recently described the current outlook for the Scottish economy as an industrial revolution-sized opportunity. I agree, but that description came with a stark warning that Scotland was at risk of missing out on the opportunity due to a lack of a skills pipeline. These comments came after the publication of Scottish Engineering's Engineering Skills Gap Analysis for Scotland, published at the start of the month. I believe we need to seriously consider the findings of this report and its implications for the future of engineering and its impact on our economy. The results are the output of a survey of 70 engineering companies from a broad range of sectors based on their operations in Scotland. Scottish Engineering reported that the skills pipeline gaps in these roles are an immediate and stark situation. Across 31 engineering roles, the average demand showed industry will require an additional 33% of the volume currently in role by the end of 2025, rising to 46% by the end of 2026 and rising again to 58% by the end of 2027. These are concerning figures, but the conclusions are cause for further concern, as it should be noted that these gaps are only for existing industry. This means there is no allowance for the additional demand of offshore wind, grid infrastructure investment, decarbonisation, heat energy or green hydrogen production, sectors that are essential to Scotland's stated aims of achieving net zero. The report concludes where that demand is for the opportunity for inward investment, unless there is a rapid change in the required skills investment, there is a considerable risk of damage to the incumbent industry. Scottish Engineering also estimate that 20% of demand for apprentice training programmes has been unmet due to real terms funding cuts to apprenticeships in Scotland. When I speak to employers of skilled workers across Mid-Scotland and Fife, one of the issues that comes up time and again is that due to a lack of skilled workers needed to meet industry demand, the whole of the UK is sharing pools of workers for each skill. An example of this is Hinkley Point Nuclear Power Station project in Somerset, England, which is attracting workers from Scotland due to the high skills demand for skills, as well as higher pay on offer. This is why I think it is crucial to also look at this issue from a UK-wide point of view. The Open University Business Barometer 2024 found that despite tiny green shoots of improvement, the skills gap in the UK remains stubbornly high across sectors, regions and for all 4 nations. Across the UK, 62% of organisations were facing skills shortages. In Scotland, this is 56% of organisations facing skills shortages. And a concerning 52% of organisations in Scotland do not have specific recruitment, retention or training initiatives for targeted groups. This is why my motion today is calling for two things. First, the Scottish and UK governments must work together to encourage the next generation of skilled workers by making available the funding and resources needed to provide the apprenticeships of today for the jobs of tomorrow. There is a clear and desperate need for this, and I urge both of Scotland's governments to recognise the urgency of the situation we are in and to act accordingly. Further, I believe the Scottish Government must take action to foster a new partnership between schools, colleges, universities and industry to ensure young people are aware and able to take advantage of the opportunities available in Scotland's industrial sector. I talked to one academic recently who told me we must do more to build the relationships between the schools, the colleges and industry. And he was very clear, in terms of schools, this should start at P6, P7, not waiting until S3 and S4. Now, I know there is a lot of work going on by the Scottish Government and its agencies, and I do not want to undermine any of that. But I do want to say much more has to be done if we are to give every child the chance to gain the education and skills for the jobs of today and tomorrow. We need a revolution in skills, from the primary schools to the secondary schools and to the colleges, all working in partnership with industry. We need a regional skills strategy for every region of Scotland, along with funding at the regional level to deliver a regional workforce plan. And I would stress that government at every level must work in partnership with industry. We must listen to the concerns of industry when it comes to the apprenticeship levy and the calls for reform. The concerns at the intention to wind up the Scottish Apprenticeship Advisory Board and the concerns of business at the decision to remove Skills Development Scotland from post-school funding. The future for jobs in Scotland can be and should be very bright, but it requires a stronger partnership, a new approach that puts education, training and skills at its very heart and driven by education and industry working together in partnership. Scotland deserves nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Rowley. We move to the open debate. I call first Fergus Ewing to be followed by Brian Whittle. Around 4 minutes, Mr Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I congratulate Mr Rowley on bringing forward the motion, on his contribution today, which I thought set the scene extremely well. So we're grateful for the opportunity to debate this key issue. Presiding Officer, governments should do what they promise, but they shouldn't promise what they cannot do. And it does seem to me, and I say this with some regret, that the UK and Scottish targets to achieve net zero by 2030 in the case of the UK is simply unachievable. And my submission is that rather than set targets which are unachievable, for example the heat pumps targets which said that we were to produce 1 million heat pumps by 2030 and 170,000 renewable heating systems for houses off the gas grid, 1.2 million when we're only installing a few thousand a year, is simply just green pie in the sky. It's just stupid. So what do we need to do, and what should we do in order to be able to do it? Well, what is not appreciated, I think, by many is that the renewables opportunity, a form of industrial revolution for this century in Scotland, will create a volume of civil engineering projects, the like of which is completely without precedent. Pump storage, grid schemes, work at the places like Global Energy, Haventus, Port of Cromarty Firth and Inverness, electrification of the East Coast line, hospitals, housing, schools, Scottish Water, £1 billion a year. If you tot it all up, presiding officer, it amounts to around about £50 or £60 billion over the next 10-15 years. This is without precedent. And with it, as Mr Rowley argues, the skills challenge of being able to do this work is simply on a scale that we cannot begin to comprehend. I'm no expert in this area. I wait with interest to hear what the Minister says. But a lot of good work is done around Scotland in our schools, our colleges, by industry. But we need to multiply that considerably. And it should be a big focus of what we do, along with the other capacity problems that exist in relation to achieving our aspirations, which I think are all desirable. Yes, I'm happy to take Mr Sweeney.
Paul Sweeney.
For giving way on that point. He's making a very powerful series of points on this issue. Does he agree with me that recent difficulties in the shipbuilding industry, for example, have necessitated a change in early recruitment so that they have introduced a role called a trade assistant, which removes academic entry qualifications and has offered a great pathway for those who don't have traditional academic skills to enter the industry and build their skills in a practical way? And that's been compounded by the creation of the Applied Shipbuilding Skills Academy in Glasgow.
Fergus Ewing, I can give you the time back.
Well, I don't have the knowledge of shipbuilding that perhaps the member has, but I do sympathise with his point. I wanted to say that a lot is being done by colleges, by the UHI, for example, and a recent report by Statkraft, the second biggest company in Norway and Europe's largest generator of renewable energy, found that the transformational project carried out at the UHI offers significant opportunities, and in a particular pump storage project with up to 500 workers needed at the peak of the construction period. That's just one of a very large number of projects, not all of which will go ahead, but many of which will. I wanted also to praise the efforts that industry is doing. The Civil Engineers Contractors Association, for example, has created its own scheme, which has provided an 18-week course for young people to gain the opportunity of a guaranteed job interview at the end, with a success rate of over 50% going into engineering. I haven't time to elucidate further, so I'll just close by saying that I know that a lot is being done. I'm not here to criticise, but shouldn't we really focus much more on this, and far less on the high-level rhetoric about unachievable targets, which take up so much of our discourse, and frankly are concealing the real problems that lie lurking beneath the surface, problems it's our duty to tackle and solve.
Thank you. I now call Brian Whittle to be followed by Richard Leonard. Around 4 minutes. Mr Whittle.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak in this debate, and I can thank Alex Rowley for bringing what is an important subject to the Chamber, and one that I've discussed many times in here. We are a nation synonymous with innovation and engineering know-how. Even the miracle working chief engineer on the Starship Enterprise was a Scot. But no matter how strong our reputation, Deputy Presiding Officer, we cannot afford to rest on our laurels. Yesterday's successes are no guarantee of tomorrow's, which is why it's so important that we give the next generation of young engineers the opportunity and the pathway they need to develop their talents and become the skilled workforce that Scotland's engineering sector needs. As Alex Rowley's motion and Scottish Engineering Report both point out, there is a widening gap between the workforce demands of the engineering businesses and the supply of available staff. Nowhere is this gap more acute in the south of Scotland than in Ayrshire, which has well-established engineering sector that is desperate to grow. Recently, we've seen the arrival of subsea cable manufacturers XLCC, whose multi-billion-pound investment at Hunterston is expected to need as many as 3,500 skilled workers over the coming years. Indeed, XLCC and some other businesses are so concerned about securing a skilled workforce that they are investing significant sums of money developing their own in-house training schemes, often in collaboration with Ayrshire College. And while Alex Rowley's motion highlights the growing demand for engineers within the renewable sector and energy sectors, we should recognise there is an enormous potential for growth in other parts of the engineering sector. Ayrshire is also home to Prestwick Airport and the cluster of international aerospace businesses surrounding it. Deputy Presiding Officer, it comes as a surprise to far too many people that over 50% of Scotland's entire aerospace workforce is based in and around Prestwick, and that's more than 4,000 jobs. In my time as an MSP, I have been fortunate enough to visit many of these businesses and see firsthand the time and money they have committed to creating sophisticated, world-class facilities in Scotland. These global businesses have put faith in Scotland's engineering workforce to deliver, and they have ambitions to invest more. The Ayrshire Regional Growth Deal can be a catalyst for this investment, supporting businesses including Ryanair and Woodward and GE Caledonian to take forward their own plans for growth. Taken together, these plans are expected to see 1,500 new jobs created within the aerospace cluster in the next 3 years. But all of these investments can only succeed with the right workforce behind them. A significant number of these jobs aren't aimed at graduates, but at apprentices, giving young people a valuable opportunity to earn and learn at the same time. Most, if not all, of these apprenticeships depend on local colleges having both the funding and the capacity to deliver them. However, as with many colleges across Scotland, Ayrshire College is having to fight an uphill battle to balance its books. The Scottish Government's latest budget looks set to deliver a below-inflation increase and continue a trend which has seen funding fall by 17% since 21-22, according to Audit Scotland. So you have a college perfectly placed to facilitate millions, if not billions of pounds of inward investment into its local area, and instead of getting additional funding to make the most of this opportunity, they're being asked to find at least £1.5 million in savings. Deputy Presiding Officer, I appreciate that in every budget, difficult choices have to be made, but cutting college funding isn't a difficult choice, it's a nonsensical choice. Ayrshire has one of the lowest workforce productivity rates in Scotland, but the potential in the area is enormous and nowhere more so than within the engineering sector. If both the SNP and Labour governments are serious about delivering economic growth, then it is in places like Ayrshire's engineering sector that the greatest opportunities lie. I have no doubt that across this chamber this afternoon we'll have unanimous agreement on the importance of the engineering sector, apprenticeships and creating the skills pathway needed to grow the workforce. What is needed urgently is a willingness by both the UK and Scottish governments to make the choice to back this sector, prioritise funding towards engineering apprenticeships and focus that investment where there is greatest demand. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer.
Thank you. I now call Richard Lenner to be followed by Lorna Slater. Around 4 minutes.
Thank you very much indeed, Deputy Presiding Officer. And can I remind members of my voluntary register of trade union interests? Can I begin by thanking Alex Rowley for not just leading this afternoon's debate, but for acting with such speed to get this report on the agenda of Parliament. It's a pity that the Government does not display the same sense of urgency, because for all of the independent reviews, the Government reports, the ministerial statements, the surveys of the landscape, the creation of strategic boards, what we are witnessing is a catastrophic skills crisis and a Government that is not part of the solution but part of the problem. Public investment in skills and training is not going up, it's coming down. Skills Development Scotland is about to be abolished. And for all of the talk of a just transition in our economy and of reforms in our public services, there is no leadership, no strategy and no plan for either. So this report by Scottish Engineering should serve as a wake-up call. It lays bare what is going on out there in the real world on the factory floor because of the demographics of the current workforce, because of expectations of business growth. Employers estimate that a third more engineers will be needed in Scotland by the end of this year. That 46% more will be needed by the end of next year. And 58% more will be needed by the end of the year after that. In some trades, it's even higher. In electrical and electronic engineering, the skills gap, the replacement and recruitment rate will be nearly 100%. And the horizon for this analysis is the next 3 years. The problem is, an engineering apprenticeship takes 4 years to complete, and it takes 6 years to be fully competent. So as this report concludes, and I quote, "Unless the company has started training already, that resource will not be ready at the time of need." Workforce skills are central to the economy. They are too important to be left to market forces, to free enterprise, or to employers alone. It cries out for government leadership. That is why I have long argued that we need to establish not only sectoral collective bargaining with the trade unions, which we do, we need to establish sectoral, industrial and economic planning with the trade unions too, including effective planning for skills. We need a Minister for Labour in the Cabinet. We need an end to cheap labour. We need to open up apprenticeship opportunities to all, including to those from areas of multiple deprivation, to women as well as to men, with a guarantee of an apprenticeship, of useful work, or a vocational training place for every school leaver, incentivising SMEs, boosting numbers and putting the funding in place. Because the challenge here is dimensional. It is one of scale, but it is also systematic. It is ideological. We cannot rely on the logic of capitalism to decide our future. We need workforce planning, an industrial strategy, and above all, we need economic democracy. To some, this will be seen as idealistic, socialistic, impractical, unworkable or undesirable, yet there is nothing more impractical, unworkable or undesirable than the notion that we can continue to run our economy the way that we do at the present. So I make no apology. It is time for radical change. People should have the right to slot in and out of education and work with income protection, the right to liberation within work, but liberation from work too. And if ever we are going to win the skills revolution, a just transition, useful work in place of useless toil, and transformational economic change, it must be driven by a vision, forged on a plan, inspired by authentic, principled political leadership, but it will only be delivered with the support of the people.
Thank you. I now call Lorna Slater to be followed by Ben McPherson. Around 4 minutes. Ms Slater.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I am very concerned by this report on the engineering skills gap and recognise that this is now a very acute issue as we transition Scotland's economy to a green one and invest in the opportunities that are ahead of us with that green transition, specifically in renewable energy, but also in the heat networks and all the other engineering infrastructure that we're going to need. The shortage of engineers in Scotland and indeed in the UK is a long-standing issue, though. From 2 decades ago, when I arrived in the UK, I knew there was a shortage of engineers here. That's one of the reasons I chose to come here. I had Canadian student loans to pay off, and at that time, $3 to the pound seemed like a good way to pay it off. And I'd heard you were short of engineers, so I bought a one-way ticket and rocked up. I was offered 2 jobs in my first week. That is how acute the shortage of engineers is and has been for the last 20 years in the UK and in Scotland. And certainly it's something I experienced and my colleagues experienced daily and weekly as we tried to build ambitious projects in various parts of the UK and certainly in Scotland in renewable energy, trying to find electrical engineers, trying to find electrical technicians, mechanical engineers. There just aren't enough of them. And many of my colleagues were immigrants like myself. Specifically, we used to be able to draw on the talents of EU citizens under freedom of movement when we were members of the European Union. So what was an acute skills shortage in the UK and Scotland because of a lack of homegrown engineers was previously supplemented by immigrants like myself. But of course, Brexit cut us off at our knees there by restricting a particular pool of talented individuals who could come here and work more smoothly. So we have, I guess, an acute situation brought on by this up against the needs we have for our transition. Whether it is through apprenticeships, whether it is through HNC, HND, or through a degree programme, engineering is an exciting career. And recruiting more young people into it within Scotland and the UK is a long-standing issue. Part of this, I've always thought, was because of the way engineering is framed, as if it was all about maths and sitting at a computer, staring at a screen, watching numbers scroll by like you're in the Matrix. Engineering is very hands-on, it's team working, it's creative, it's solving problems that nobody's ever had before. And right now, it is solving the problems that are going to save our planet, that are going to change our future and mean that humanity can survive and thrive. Engineers are right on the edge of this. And for me, there was nothing more rewarding than working as part of a team to build something real that you could then point at and say, we created this thing that had not existed before. We've tried something new. We've maybe failed a few times. We've learned a lot, but here is this thing that we've built. And putting that exciting vision around engineering has got to be the way to encourage more young people into the space, emphasising the creativity, teamwork and rewards that come from solving the problems that our world desperately needs solutions to. The Withers Review and a review of the role of Skills Development Scotland, I think, is a timely opportunity to look into this space. I challenge some of my colleagues' assertions that Skills Development Scotland is not in need of significant review. I think that it is, particularly around careers advice and the way skills are taught and, I guess, available to people at different ages. Yes, young people absolutely more young people need to be encouraged to take up maths and physics, but also career changers, upskillers and career returners need to have access to engineering skills and the pathways into engineering, whether that is through apprenticeships for all ages or being able to access university and college courses at older ages to be able to get into these. I want more people to consider taking the basic engineering skills, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering and computer engineering. All of these lead to exciting careers. You don't need to have a fancy master's degree in environmental engineering to work in renewable energy and the environment. Get those basic degrees behind you. They're what we need, and I absolutely encourage anyone to take these up who might be interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Slater. And I call Ben McPherson to be followed by Sharon Dowie, around 4 minutes. Mr McPherson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Just coincidentally, on Monday, I was in the offices of Arup here in Edinburgh, and colleagues will be aware of the significance of that firm in terms of its impact on engineering across countries, and including here in Scotland and the UK, and was reminded of what Lorna Slater has just talked about, how people who work in engineering, and I had the privilege of working for an engineering firm for some time in my 20s, are solution-focused, creative people, and a really inspiring bunch of people to be around, and also such an integral part of our economy right now and certainly into the future. And that is why it is really commendable that Alex Rowley has brought this motion to Parliament for us to have this opportunity to discuss the importance of having a reliable pipeline of new engineers coming into the Scottish market, and to future-proof our systems to make sure that we have that growth of people going into this area of our economy that's so necessary for our future and our well-being and our productivity as a nation and our GDP. And also that we create a system that doesn't just meet the needs of what's in front of us in terms of the net zero transition and the huge opportunities that are emerging in the decade ahead and the one after that, but also how we build the future of the Scottish economy in the 21st century. And we're considering that in a time where the opportunities for Scotland in terms of our potential are so buoyant and so wide when it comes to net zero in particular, but also in other industries. But we face a global scenario where there is significant challenge because of what is looking likely to come from US economic policy and what that might affect in terms of the stability of the global economy, and also in a UK economic framework where we are still uncertain and very worried about what the effect of the national insurance increase will be. So we cannot take the opportunities of what is ahead of us in Scotland in terms of net zero and engineering for granted, and we must be strategic and proactive in how we plan out what is ahead. And I commend the Government for instigating the Withers Review and for taking the time to consider it, and for and I'm looking forward to the Minister's summing up today, but also the statement next week to learn more about what the Government is going to do in this area. Because some of these decisions will be quite difficult and change may be required. And I think collectively we need to make sure that we are considering what is in the best interests of the young people and of the future needs of the economy, and be brave if we need to in terms of the disruption. Because that is, when I speak to industry, whether it's to do with the mass growth that there is in the Port of Leith, in my constituency, or in other sectors of engineering that are operating in Edinburgh, Northern Leith and in Edinburgh as a whole, they are not shy about saying to me that they want industry to be more involved and that they want us to make change and progress. So I'm interested to hear what is said by the Minister in the coming weeks and today on that. 2 points I just want to raise that I do think we need to consider. One is awareness. Organisations like Edinburgh Science in my constituency and networks that there are locally do a lot to raise awareness of what opportunities there are for young people. But it seemed to me when I was on the Education Committee that we lacked a consistency across the country about how we just let people know of the opportunities that there are. And that feeds into the ambitions that we have collectively to address poverty and also to make sure that we encourage our young people to go in positive destinations. And unfortunately, we know at the moment, with a very small minority, if people go in bad directions, what effect that can have on our community and on them. And the second point, in conclusion, Presiding Officer, is just on retention. We are losing a lot of skilled people, including in engineering, to other countries who have been trained here in Scotland. And I do think we need to consider whether we need systematic change to encourage more people to stay here or to think about the finance that we're spending on training other people's workforces.
Thank you, Mr Macpherson. And I call to the final speaker in the open debate, Sharon Dowie, around 4 minutes. Ms Dowie.
Thank you. Presiding Officer, today's debate rightly centres around the nationwide skills gap in engineering and the impact this has on growth, opportunities, education and Scotland's broader economy. And while this is indeed a Scotland-wide problem, we can see all the failures and evidence at local level too. The challenges being imposed in Ayrshire College is a perfect example. The institution continues to thrive in spite of the near impossible environment it's expected to work in. There are a record number of student enrolments and partnership developments, and it expects to play a key role for preparing a workforce for future projects in the area, leading to the creation of 5,000 jobs in the Presbycary Space Cluster and at Hunterston. But here is the problem. For years, the Scottish Government's funding settlement has meant the college has had to cut its cloth. Staffing and non-staffing budgets have continued to reduce. But even with the below-inflation increase planned in the upcoming budget, the money does not go far enough. In fact, once pay deals and other rising costs are catered for, further cuts may have to be identified. The UK Labour Party's national insurance changes will also hit the college for a further £1 million. At Ayrshire College, without further funding, a staggering £2.5 million worth of savings will need to be made in 2025-26. Presiding Officer, there is simply no way the college can feasibly be expected to make these savings without there being serious implications for people and businesses in Ayrshire. Our economy needs colleges like this more than ever. To train up enough people for emerging economies, to staff the renewable energy revolution, to ensure the supply chain is there to facilitate projects leading us to net zero. If anything, the Government should now be pumping money into these institutions now in order to reap the results later down the line. Doing so would also bolster opportunities for young people, ease concerns about job losses coming down the tracks in other sectors, and guarantee that when jobs do emerge in energy and engineering sectors, we have enough homegrown workers to fill them. The success of these colleges also attracts people to live in communities at risk of rural depopulation. Without funding, there will be lost opportunities. Ayrshire College and others like it are anchor institutions with broad-reaching arms. They provide not just qualifications that can bring people into gainful employment, but social and practical skills that can be a catalyst for helping people lift themselves out of poverty. With this report highlighting a concerning skills deficit, it is vital that more support, not less, is provided to our further educational institutes. The Scottish Government should be standing by to work with colleges to offer additional capital investments and greater funding for projects and courses tailored to meet regional needs of sectors and employers across the country. Ayrshire College is just one example of an institution that, for too long, has been undervalued, underfunded and underestimated. Fortunately, due to a dedicated and proactive leadership team, it continues to defy the odds. It is time for this government to listen to colleges and listen to the industry. By doing so, we would get the benefit now and in the future. We cannot continue to expect the colleges of Scotland to make the impossible happen year after year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Dowie. And I now invite Graham Day to wind up the debate. Minister, for around 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I genuinely want to thank Alex Rowley for bringing this important debate to the Chamber, because not only do I welcome the opportunity to explore the topic, he's framed his motion in such a way that, had it been introduced to the Chamber as Labour Party business, I think the Government might well have pretty much accepted it. We'd, at the very least, have had a constructive debate around it. And just as I acknowledge Mr Rowley's motivation here and his passion for the topic, I think he knows my commitment to moving things forward in this space. The Government shares Scottish Engineering's desire to realise the huge opportunities in emerging sectors for Scotland. But I also recognise the concern of their members around being able to access support as smaller, already established businesses, and not just as part of inward investment initiatives or the additional demands referenced in Mr Rowley's motion and in his opening speech. We also recognise that the manufacturing sector is key to the delivery of our broader ambitions for Scotland's economy. That's why in recent years we've invested extensively in infrastructure for the sector, notably £75 million in the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland. But recognising the significance of this sector, my ministerial colleagues and our officials have held several meetings with Scottish Engineering to discuss the report to which the motion refers, because we understand the challenges and the opportunities that they highlight. Solutions to some of these challenges are not simple or necessarily quick to deliver, but there are opportunities to make progress now, and I'll return to those later. Engineering apprenticeships are already a priority for skills development in Scotland, and the demand for new starts with contracted providers and employers for engineering apprenticeships has been met for this year, albeit through SDS's in-year reallocation process. I also want to make the point, Presiding Officer, that between 2021-22 and 23-24, the number of engineering MAs increased from 1,264 to 1,826, and the figures for 24-25 have totalled 2,255 for what's termed the engineering and energy related occupation grouping. So there is investment in apprenticeships. However, the report does suggest that there is still unmet demand on top of those already in training, and there may be a number of factors for this, including the capacity of the system, including college capacity. So we're exploring this further to ensure that we better meet the needs of the economy from the outset of the allocations process. As I said, the number of engineering modern apprenticeship starts has increased year on year, as it has with graduate apprenticeships. And in terms of the additional demands of other sectors referenced in the motion, it's important to note that having the necessary education and skills provisions in place is only one aspect of meeting workforce demand. A range of other interconnected factors, for example, demographic changes, migration policies, housing and accommodation, employer pay and conditions, or, as the report notes, competition from other sectors, also have a direct impact. The answer to wider labour shortages issues often lie outside of the post-school education system and sometimes lie with employers in terms of attracting and retaining staff. The motion references a risk to inward investment and the levels of investment in skills. Now, Scotland has a strong track record of attracting inward investment. For the 9th successive year, we've remained the top performing place in the UK for inward investment projects outside of London, highlighting the continued success of our approach. But we are alive to the need to ensure that the trained individuals that these inward investment projects require are available to them. On funding, the draft budget is providing over £2 billion for colleges, universities and the wider skills system. And I do just have to say gently to Mr Whittle and to Sharon Dowie, we would be unable to sustain that level of funding if their party had gotten its way on the budget. £1 billion of tax cuts can only be achieved by cutting public spending. And of course I'll give way.
Whittle.
Very grateful for the Minister to give way. And actually, in his statement there, he highlights exactly why you keep getting this wrong. Because if you had actually invested in the college sector continually through that, we would grow the economy and your tax take would be much bigger. That's is why we're having problems.
Minister.
Investment in the sector now, at the same time as they are, I presume, supporting this party's policy on tax cuts. You cannot square that circle. But to make use of the ongoing substantial investment in the sectors, we also need to drive agility and efficiency through the system. We need employers to think creatively and work together, in some instances to create the critical mass of students that the training providers will require to deliver to the asks that are being made of them. And we, of course, need to do more in our school system, as a number of members alluded to. The DYW groups across Scotland do fantastic work, and we need to encourage that activity across the system because it's incredibly valuable. And, of course, in relation to Ben McPherson's point, a particular focus of all the reform work is improving the participation of employers in helping to shape the outputs of our training offering, because that is absolutely essential here. Over the next few years, we'll be undertaking a programme of reform of the post-school education and skills system, which is going to include improving career support so that there's better information and careers choices, including potential job prospects and earnings, and connecting students, schools and employers, as Alec Rowley is looking for. Reforming apprenticeships to reduce the complexity of that system, to get the focus right, and building on improved understanding of the post-school qualifications system. On skills planning, we are putting in place a mechanism to collectively agree and prioritise Scotland's strategic skills need to meet our economic, social and environmental aims, with a specific focus on the regional needs. I fully anticipate that engineering skills will be central to many, if not all of these, but we do need a robust and objective method to gather the data and influence provision accordingly. Now, on short-term actions, at the same time as those longer-term reforms of the skills system, we recognise that more immediate action is needed to address shortages in engineering. That's where we're actively taking forward a project to identify specific actions that may be taken to address skills shortages in, as I say, the short term. Officials will be engaging with the sector in the coming weeks to assess options and agree potential solutions that are being identified. Presiding Officer, this debate has highlighted challenges that the engineering sector face. I hope, in responding to Mr Rowley, I have made clear that we are alive to these and seeking to respond. We are committed to working together with the sector, both on short and longer-term changes that will address these challenges and to realise investment opportunities for Scotland. I look forward to working with Scottish Engineering, colleagues across this chamber, employers, our colleges, other training providers and the universities in order to take this work forward. Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much, Minister. That concludes the debate, and I suspend this meeting of Parliament until 2 p.m.